My family lives in a quiet place, deep in the mountains where the roads have been forgotten by time. My grandfather owned a lakeside cottage there long ago. We had nearly forgotten it existed after my grandparents passed away. They had lived a long, wealthy life, leaving behind enough money to ensure my father never had to work a day in his life. He spent his time managing the family business, and life was good, until a month ago. Something happened to my mother. It started just before my 14th birthday. She began saying strange, nonsensical things. Her gaze became predatory, scary, and threatening. It felt as though she were no longer my mother. It felt as though she were no longer human. The night of my birthday, she came home late. We had arranged a small party, but when she walked through the door, the air in the room shifted. She was carrying my birthday cake, but it was half-eaten, mauled by her own teeth. My father saw the look in her eyes and immediately ushered me to my bedroom. I listened through the door, my heart hammering. I heard my father shout, "Stop! Honey, what are you doing? They're our friends, our neighbors." Then came the scream. The guests, the children, everyone was screaming for help. Suddenly, the house went pitch black. The power was dead. I huddled behind my door, covering my ears and sobbing until a single gunshot rang out. Then, silence. I fainted from the sheer terror of the dark. I woke up the next morning in the back of our pickup truck. The wheels were bouncing over a jagged dirt road. The smell of wet mud and pine hit me, and I realized we were deep in the forest, heading toward the old lake house. My father was a doctor, and my mother was a medical researcher who specialized in rare diseases. He wouldn't tell me much, only that I wasn't to disturb him. "Something happened to Mom," he whispered, his voice trembling. "We're going to fix her, then we'll go home. Until then, stay inside." He locked her in the basement. I watched the hope slowly drain from his eyes day by day. That morning, we went into the thick woods to hunt. We caught our prey easily. That night, after we finished our own dinner, I followed Dad into the basement. The air was frigid and smelled of rot. She sat in the corner, still wearing her tattered clothes from my birthday. Her hair was matted, her skin sallow, and her hands were bound in heavy chains. I started to cry, but Dad held me back. "Don't go near her," he warned. With shaking hands, he threw a piece of raw meat toward her. She didn't move at first, then she jerked awake like a machine being switched on. She didn't even look at me. She just fell upon the meat and tearing at it with animalistic hunger. "Why isn't she in a hospital?" I demanded later. We argued for hours until a violent thud echoed from beneath the floorboards. 3, 4, 5 times the basement door shook. Then a raspy, inhuman voice crawled up through the vents. "I need more meat." A week passed. We hunted 6 times. Every time, we fed her raw flesh. One night, I heard her crying. It sounded so much like my mother that my heart broke. The next day, my father went out to hunt alone because I had caught a cold. While he was gone, I heard her call my name. Her voice sounded normal, soft and loving. I couldn't stop myself. I found the key, stole into the basement, and opened the heavy door. She was laying there, still as a corpse. She was so skinny now, her skin a ghostly, translucent white. "Mom?" I whispered. Nothing. I stepped closer, sobbing quietly. Then, from a distance, I heard the horn of my father's car. He was back. Panic flared in me, but as I turned to run, I heard a tiny whisper, a sound like someone speaking through a mouth full of blood. "Miku, my son, how are you?" "Mom," I cried out. "What happened to you?" "Your father," she rasped. "He did this to me. Help me, son. We have to escape before he does the same to you." I didn't know what to believe, but I couldn't leave her chained like an animal. As I clicked the final lock open, the air in the room went cold. Her face shifted, her teeth sharpened into jagged points, and her eyes turned a rhythmic, bloody red. She lunged for my throat, but a heavy iron rod cracked through her skull. My father had arrived. "I told you," he screamed, dragging me toward the stairs. "I told you not to go down there." "I freed her, Dad. I'm sorry." We heard the sound of claws on the wooden ladder. The basement door was open. Dad looked at me with a look of pure, hollowed-out terror. "Run! Run as fast as you can and hide!" He stayed behind to lock the inner door, but it didn't hold. I hid in the car, watching the house shake. I heard a scream that didn't sound human, followed by another gunshot. When I finally went inside, I found my father on the floor. My mother was dead, and he had been bitten. As he lay there, he told me the truth. He hadn't been trying to cure her. He had created the monster she became. 10 years have passed. I never left the mountain. I watched my father slowly vanish, the love in his eyes replaced by a mindless, flickering hunger. He begged me to shoot him before the turn was complete, but I couldn't. He is all I have left. He is locked in that same basement now. I thought the nightmare ended there. I thought the virus only spread through blood, but it has mutated. It has adapted to the air, or perhaps it's a slow-acting poison in my veins. I'm starting to feel the cold, even when I'm standing in the sun. I feel an insane, gnawing hunger. My veins are turning black and my vision is blurring into shades of red. Sometimes I wake up in the woods covered in blood, with no memory of how I got there or whose blood it is. I think about ending it, but I can't. None of us could. My grandfather, my mother, my father. The hunger for life is too strong. But if this continues, the virus will leave this mountain. It will hit the villages, then the cities, then the world. If anyone is reading this, if you can still hear the human left in me, come to the lake house and help me to end it.
I was just 18 years old when this happened. On my first St. Paddy's Day as an adult, the girls and I went out for drinks, dressed in green, and partied past midnight. I couldn't have asked for a better time with them, but eventually, we had to go home. Being responsible, we took the train. The streets were already dead by the time we decided to make our way to the subway station. Once underground, we boarded the last train of the night together. We were still lit as we got moving. Each of us lived within walking distance of that same line, but at different stops along the way. Some of us got off in small groups or in pairs, while others left alone, promising to text the group chat as soon as they made it home. One by one, our group dwindled. The train grew quieter, emptier. I was one of the last girls off. I left alone, waving goodbye to the few remaining friends that had stayed with me. The station was a ghost town. I got out of there quickly. I couldn't believe how late we had stayed out. Every intersection I passed was cornered by more empty streets and lifeless sidewalks. And just as I was getting comfortable with the feeling of being so alone, I was not. Close to my apartment, the street was now completely empty except for a single car parked on the curb. The lights were off, but as I got near it, I could hear music coming from inside. It wasn't upbeat music though. It sounded old and out of key. The car was even parked the wrong way, facing me on the same side of the street I was on. Despite everything odd about the car and how dark out it was, I didn't change course. That would only make me cross directly in front of it, which didn't feel any better than walking past it. So I decided to just step a few feet to the side and mind my business. As I walked past the car, the window slowly rolled down. Chills ran down my spine and I started to panic. I averted my eyes and picked up the pace, not wanting to make eye contact. I managed to walk past the car without being catcalled, but then a moment later, I heard the door open. There was no other car on the street. It had to be the same one, but I didn't turn my head to make sure. I just had to keep my cool.
Don't look back, don't engage. You just had a little too much to drink, and they're probably way drunker than you. So just stop being paranoid and...
If I had looked back, I would have seen how close he got and how soon he closed the gap. I just didn't expect it. I never thought people would actually be so evil. My optimism didn't help me. The man kept me silent with a vice grip around my throat and dragged me all the way back to his car. By the time he took me there, I was so close to passing out I didn't have the strength to fight back. He had already overpowered me, and in that state, there was nothing I could do.
Relax! Your Uber's here!
Let me go!
Just get in there!
Let me out of here! I'm being abducted!
Shut up! The louder you get, the worse shit I'm gonna do to you!
I don't care! Let me out!
You're already gonna beg for mercy, bitch! Would you rather beg for death?
You're a piece of shit! I hope you crash!
I'll make you wish you never stepped foot outside on St. Paddy's Day!
I was in full-blown panic mode. I couldn't think. I just acted on every impulse, even though the door hadn't opened the last 20 times I tried. I kept pulling the handle as hard as I could. Suddenly, it gave way. The door opened, and I tumbled out without even trying. I rolled across the asphalt over and over, finally skidding to a stop in the middle of the road. My injuries and the pain that came with them should have knocked the wind out of me, made me sit there in agony, but adrenaline is a hell of a thing. I got up without skipping a beat, then started sprinting in the opposite direction. I ran and ran until I plowed into a random man walking the street. He was drunk and confused, probably almost as scared as I was, but he called the police and ushered me to a 24/7 store where I could be safe. Soon, the authorities came, took me to the hospital to get treated, and wrote down my statement. I gave them every detail I could remember. The man's age, his hair, his glasses, his car, but sadly, it wasn't enough. When he kept going after I fell out of his car, that was the last I ever heard or saw of him. He was never found, ever since then. St. Paddy's Day triggers this traumatic memory, and at the first thought of going out, my brain forces me to relive this story, the story of how I was almost kidnapped.
My name is Joel. I'm 24, and at the time of this, I was in my second year of a postgraduate degree, living alone in a small one-bedroom flat on the third floor of a student apartment block. There were maybe 30 units in the building across 4 floors. I knew maybe 4 people by face. Everyone else was just a door. I want to be clear about something before I get into this. I'm not someone who gets easily rattled. I grew up in a rough part of the city. I've dealt with difficult situations my whole life, and I've always considered myself reasonably good at reading people. I say that because what made all of this so unsettling wasn't just what was happening. It was the fact that I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, even when I had no solid reason to feel that way. That instinct turned out to be right. It started in October, about 6 weeks into the new academic year. I was coming back late from the library, probably around 11 at night, and as I stepped out of the lift onto my floor, there was a man standing in the hallway. He was standing maybe 4 doors down from mine, facing my direction. He was tall, mid-30s maybe, with a shaved head and a gray zip-up jacket. He wasn't doing anything. Not knocking on a door, not on his phone, not walking anywhere. He was just standing there. When I stepped out of the lift, he looked at me. I nodded. He didn't respond, and I walked to my flat and went in. I assumed he was locked out of his room or waiting for someone. The following week, I saw him again. Same floor, same end of the hallway, different time of night. This time it was closer to midnight. I'd been up late writing and went to the communal kitchen at the end of the hall to make tea. He was standing near the window at the far end, again, not doing anything in particular. He looked at me the moment I came out of my door, which meant he'd been facing my direction before I appeared. I made my tea, came back, and locked my door. I asked the guy across the hall from me if he knew who the man was. He said he didn't recognize the description. As far as he was aware, no one on our floor matched it. Said the man might be from one of the other floors. I let it go. Told myself it was just someone who liked standing in hallways for whatever reason. Strange, but not threatening. Then I started finding things outside my door. The first time was a coffee cup, a takeaway cup from the cafe on campus, still faintly warm, sitting directly in front of my door. No note, no name. I assumed it was left for the wrong flat and moved it to the side of the hallway. 4 days later, a paperback book was placed outside my door. It was a novel, the kind of literary fiction you'd read on a course like mine. There was no note, no name written inside. I stood in the hallway holding it for a while, trying to work out if someone was being friendly or if something else was going on. I knocked on the doors either side of mine. Neither of them had left it. Neither of them had seen anything. A week after the book, I found a photograph. It was face down on my doormat, which meant someone had slid it under the door. It was a printed photograph of the view from what appeared to be a window at night, looking out at a car park. I recognized the car park immediately. It was the one directly behind our building. But what made my stomach drop was the reflection in the window. You could see, very faintly, a lit room behind the camera. And in that lit room, visible in the reflection, was what appeared to be a person sitting at a desk, facing a screen. At the angle and the floor level, the only room it could have been was mine. Someone had photographed my window from across the car park and then printed it and posted it under my door. I went straight to the building manager the next morning and told them everything. They checked the entry logs for the building and confirmed that someone had been using a fob that wasn't registered to any current tenant, a maintenance fob that should have been returned at the end of the previous year. They canceled it immediately and said they'd review the CCTV. The footage showed a man in a gray zip-up jacket entering the building on several occasions over the previous month, always late at night. His face was partially obscured each time. I moved out of that building 3 weeks later, staying with a friend while I sorted a new place. I never found out who he was or what he wanted. What I couldn't stop thinking about, and still can't, is how long it might have been going on before those 6 weeks. The previous tenant in my flat had left mid-year without explanation. I never found out why.
My name is Ayana. I'm 17 years old now, but this occurred when I was 7. We had just moved to a new state. Everything felt off. The streets, the buildings, even the silence had a weight to it. My mom, let's call her Yvonne, was always waiting for me at the bus stop after school. No matter what, it was our routine, comforting and safe. But this day was different. The bus slowed to a stop, the door creaked open, and I stepped off, alone. No mom, no familiar face. The wind was sharp, almost whispering, and the sun was just low enough to stretch shadows across the cracked pavement. I looked both ways, empty, not a single soul. I stood frozen, heart pounding. I remember thinking, where is she? My tiny fingers clutched my backpack as I took slow steps toward the gas station a few blocks away, the only place I recognized. That's when I saw him, across the street, a man, just standing there. He hadn't been there before, I swear it. One moment, the sidewalk was empty. The next, he was there, like he had risen out of the shadows. His clothes were dark, his face hard to make out, but I could feel his eyes on me, unmoving, watching. He didn't blink, didn't speak, didn't take a single step. Every hair on my body stood up. My instincts screamed, run. So I did. I sprinted toward the gas station, lungs burning, eyes stinging from fear. My legs moved on autopilot. All I could think was, don't let him follow, don't look back. Inside the gas station, I found a corner and dropped to the floor. I pretended to cry, not because I wanted attention, but because I was too afraid to ask for help. 3 older women were nearby. I hoped they'd come over, and they did. They asked questions. Where's your mom? Where do you live? But I didn't have answers. We had just moved. All the buildings looked the same. They were about to take me to the police when a car screeched to a stop outside. It was an Uber, and my mom jumped out, tears already falling from her face. She ran in and grabbed me like she thought she'd never see me again. That night, she told me the truth. She had a job interview and got stuck in traffic. When she finally arrived at the bus stop, I wasn't there. She panicked. She looked everywhere. Then a man, that man, appeared across the street. He pointed and said,
She ran towards the gas station.
That's it, just that one line. My mom looked up to thank him, but he was gone. Not walking away, not turning a corner, just gone. To this day, we don't know who he was, but but I remember what I felt when I saw him, and I'm not sure if he was trying to help me, or watching me, or something else.